February 11th, 2024. I'm going to be your host today, Dana Durnford. Hope you're doing well on this beautiful Sunday. And you can call in if you show up at 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. We got a total of 0 viewers. Because I'm not allowed to schedule a show. It doesn't show up. We got tons of news we're going to get through today. When you finally get here, you'll see it, I'm pretty sure. We'll give you a quick rundown first before we get into the show of Fukushima's nuclear meltdowns. And what you see here is ABC Australia, the biggest media in Australia. BBC is the biggest media in the United Kingdom. And CBS, the biggest media in the United States. And CNN, of course, the biggest scumbag in human history. They're pretending they're in the building to the left that actually doesn't even exist. This is a frame that they built for Reactor 1. That's Reactor 1. And it was due to an explosion. This explosion was in the fuel pools. They lost the fuel pools. And so they built this framing so you wouldn't really see the building. They kept it there for 5 years. They put a Kevlar sarcophagus around it. Now, everything you're seeing there is done by cranes. These are lethal doses. Then there's Reactor 2. Reactor 2 was 100% nuclear meltdown. It lost its fuel pools also. Reactor 3 is just detonation. And what you're going to see is big chunks falling back down to Earth at high rates of speed. This is slow motion, remember? But see the dust rising up and every big chunk's coming back. That's the fuel pools and the reactor cores of Reactor 3. So originally it said this is Reactor 3, Reactor 4. Every academic on the planet would have known immediately that those fuel pools and reactor cores were gone. And Reactor 4, even today they refuse to admit that that is the actual picture. In fact, now they claim nothing got out of the buildings whatsoever. So you had explosions in Unit 1, explosions in Reactor 2. Obviously you had explosions in Reactor 4, which would have been... They definitely got video of it. You can't have videos and pictures of Reactor 1 and Reactor 2. This is Reactor 4 right here. Without the Reactor 4. What the game was is they stripped it down from its original. And then they put these contraptions on top of it. And that was to manipulate the media, so they can manipulate you, as they've been doing for 80 years, to pretend that they were actually in a building that doesn't exist. Now, why would you do that? And then in the first year, remember, they had 865,000 cancers. In Fukushima, also, they picked up 30 million one-ton bags. So 30 million one-ton bags. They're actually growing food alongside the one-ton bags of radiation. Food was banned by 55 countries and 14 prefectures. As of July the 13th last year, the official story changed. And the new official story was that nothing got out of the buildings and that it was equal to 3 grams of sugar. So the official story is nothing got out of these buildings, despite they picked up 60 million or 30 million one-ton bags. And then there's many plume models of the radioactive fallout covering the entire planet. And the official story now is only tritium got it. It was equal to 2 of these little coins. And that's what's in 1,000 tanks. Okay, so... Actually, so the last video... When the video was over, it was almost 2 hours, 30 minutes. We had 33 views. We had, as you can't see it there, 40 thumbs up. Or maybe you can. No, you can't. If I come back over here, you can see it. 36 thumbs up. Had 116 viewers on the show. And after 12 hours, you can see there at 7 hours, the top right left-hand corner was 228.20. And every day when my show is over, 12 hours exactly after the video is over, the live show is over, I get an extra 6 seconds. But that's 12 hours later. And the comments also show up at the same time. The nuclear is touted as the savior for climate change. This is the fear-mongering of the nuclear industry. You can't survive without nuclear. So here you can see the activity of the so-called parts per million since 1851. Human activity means carbon dioxide levels are now at over 410 parts per million. So if you had $1 million and you gave away $410 and it was in a big pile, would you notice it? I doubt it, right? So 0.01 is 10,000 from a million, which means 0.041 is how much carbon we're talking about in the atmosphere. In other words, let this guy explain it to you, because he asks these Congress and senators about the carbon in your atmosphere. This short video.
Panelists, what percent of our atmosphere is CO2?
Repeat that question.
What percent of our atmosphere is CO2, carbon dioxide?
About 5%.
5?
We'll go 7. That's my favorite number.
I'll see there 5 and suggest that we know that transportation causes 49% of CO2, so that's why we're all working on energy transition.
All right. So what number do you think it is?
5.
5. Do you have one, Mr. Boyd?
So we got a 5, 7, 8. I'm going to get the high end.
All right. The answer is 0.04%. Not 1%, not half of a percent. It's 0.04%. It's gone up from 0.03 over the last couple of decades. This is what we're being all contorted into doing, is this tiny change in CO2. If we get below 0.02, plant life starts dying.
And so when you get down to 0.02, plant life dies. And we have 0.04. Okay. All right, here we go. Good morning, everybody. If you managed to find me, you're the rare ones. Bar Harbor, Maine, truck duck, I call it. Here we go. We got a poll. Let's talk about that for 1 second before we jump into the madness. Are pro-nuclear mouthpieces some of the most despicable, hateful subhumans imaginable? I think that's self-explanatory. Okay, so the Degenerate BBC, who pretended they were in the Unit 4 fuel pool, Rupert Winfield Hayes, and he also done the same thing with BBC and pretended he was in Reactor 3 fuel pool. This is not tenable. This is not acceptable. So scumbags go back, they say, to Fukushima, which is Noto Peninsula, where they had a massive earthquake on January the 1st. We covered it for 30 days straight. The Shika nuclear power plant, we believe the fuel pool melted down and that they covered it up just like they done at Fukushima. So if you think they wouldn't cover up a nuclear meltdown, then you're not being realistic. I'm going to put this on the big screen, the big shut screen. And so this is really interesting. We got a bunch of stories on this again today, and we're paying a lot of attention to this peninsula. So this is the burnt out area in Fukushima. There's over 40,000 houses destroyed. But they keep regurgitating, recycling this area with 200 burned houses and businesses. And when they talk about going back to a ghost town flattened by Japan's earthquake, they don't show you the ghost town. And now they're calling it a ghost town because it's abandoned. It's flattened. But they keep showing you this picture, this section right here. This is the only section you're basically going to see. There is a random pictures that we see of other areas. And they always roll out the most disgusting parasites in human history. But why do they keep bringing you to this place when there's 200 houses? My heart goes out to the victims. But why do they bring you to the same 200 houses for the last 30, well, it's 40 days now? Why do they keep coming back to here? Why don't they show you the rest of it? Right, we've seen all of this over and over and over and over and over. We've seen all of it many, many, many times for 40 days. And this is original footage. This is not current footage. And they're claiming that they're back there today. Why are they showing you this footage, which is the original footage? And what do they mean they went back there when we didn't have any footage from BBC being there in the first place? It's just, they're disgusting parasites. So that is collapsed buildings. That's different than the burnt destruction I just showed you in the background of this piece of shit. So this is destroyed buildings. There's over 40,000 destroyed buildings in that peninsula, but we don't see any of it. At best, we may be seeing outside of the burnt area 60 destroyed buildings out of the 40,000 buildings that collapsed. In fact, one community, Suzu, is alleged to have 4,500 of the 5,000 homes, not counting the businesses. But this is actually collapsed, but it's all cropped up close footage. They show you a teddy bear to invoke some kind of response for you. But why don't they just show us, and now you can see, this is such a rare picture to see any kind of damage like this. They usually just show you the 200 buildings that burnt down, and they've been doing this for 40 days. And this is quite a ways away from the Shika nuclear power plant. And the Shika community had over, it was, now Japan's seismic intensity Shindu scale, which is like the Richter scale for the world. Japan uses their own scale, which is the Shindu scale. It's based on 7. So the scale goes 1, 1.5, 2, 2.5, 3, 3.5, 4, 4.5, 6, 6.5, 7. So if they say it's an upper 6, it's a 7. If they say it's an upper 5, it's a 6. It doesn't go in increments of 1 like the Richter scale, which is 1, 1.1, 1.2, 1.3, 1.4 to 10, and then it goes to 2, right? So it's based on 100. Whereas the Shindu scale is based on 14 increments. And the 14 increment is 7. And Shika Nuclear Power Station, the community where it's situated, was a 7 out of a 7, which is the highest earthquake you can have in Japan. And Japan has had doozies. So why don't we get any footage out of that community? There's been 1,400 landslides. There's been around 1,500 aftershocks. These are extraordinary numbers. And that the fault line that we're talking about is a 3,000 to 4,000 year old fault line. This is the first time it ruptured in 3,000 to 4,000 years. And she just stands in front of this, and why don't you provide us some documentation? Like you say, you went back to the town, you don't show us nothing? Now she's in a single building when there's 40,000 houses dropped. Why don't she show us that? Why would you show us this couple of buildings crumbled and you barely show us that, a crop shot, and then you go into a building? The most worthless humans imaginable is what you call media. These are worthless people. And they're dangerous. They're hateful, degenerate scum. They're unbelievably dangerous. They're vicious, hateful, demonic monsters. And I'm not fucking taking it no more. I'm sick of it. I've been at this 22 years, and I'm sick of the fucking lies constantly. I'm sick of it. I'm just not going to put up with it again. As far as any of them I meet, they're going to get a fucking mouthful right on the spot. They're degenerate monsters, period. There's not a single person in the entire friggin' media that you can put any kind of faith into. So they went back to a community which we never seen footage out of from BBC in the first place. And then instead of showing us the thousands of houses that are collapsed, they showed us a couple of cropped videos where you can't get any context whatsoever, and then goes inside and spends the rest of the video just stupid. It's stupid. Stupid. Noto Peninsula earthquake is what we're talking about. The Dashcam reveals a devastating impact in community resilience. And they don't show you the video. They just show you this, just a picture. And I've already done the video of this particular one, right? But they drag you in with that story and they don't even give you the video. It's just stupid. Media is so stupid. Now they have donation vending machines set up at the airport to support the quake victims. And this is the airport in the quake area. So why would you put a vending machine there when the people that are leaving or coming there are other rescuers, and there's very few of them? No, just it's endless lies. We can't find any documentation of them being humans. The machines are catered to the hometown tax donation system, under which people can donate to the local government of their choice. So it's a tax write-off or something. So they can donate to the local government of their choice. Do you get any idea how insane? Say someone breaks into your car, and then the judge says, well, because you got them arrested, you spoiled their life, well, we want you to give them $10,000. Yeah, but they broke into my car. They broke my window. I got to pay for that. My insurance is going to go up because of it. I lost all kinds of valuable equipment. Didn't get it back. Yeah, but you had him arrested, so you got to pay him money now. That's what we're talking about. Giving money to the government is the last thing you want to be doing. The machines accept donation to 4 municipalities. The city of Fukushima, which we know nothing about, only 200 buildings caught fire, but we don't have any footage of the rest of it. Suzu, which has 4,500 buildings flattened. We've never seen footage of it. And Nanano, which has thousands flattened. We've never seen none of that. And the town of Shika, we have no idea. We have a single picture where the roads is lifted up 13 feet and a building has fell on a car. That's it. That's what we got. 85 kilometers of the coastline rose up 13 feet, and which was 820 feet of the coastline, but it was also the interior. But just if you only talk about the coastline itself, that rose up for 820 feet out into the ocean and up 13 feet, and dried out 6 ports and damaged severely 54 ports. Touch panels offer choices. Touch panels, as if nobody's ever heard of that before, offer choices for donations ranging from 1,000 yen to $500,000 yen, or about $6.7 to $3,350. And payments can be made through the credit cards. First off, Japan wouldn't let the Americans, the Chinese, the Indians, and any other country go in the first 72 hours with search and rescue dogs. They abandoned 30,000 people who lived on a slice of bread and half a cup of water. And the fact was that they have endless amounts of helicopters and technology, hovercrafts and everything else that could have got in there and got them some kind of relief. And they could have got generators, they could have got medical attention, medical help, they could have been evacuated. And they abandoned them for over 30 days. And we know that because we covered it for 30 days. Because there's a nuclear power plant where they said the earthquake in the basement of Reactor 1, not Reactor 2, but Reactor 1, was an upper 5, which is a 6, and Japan's seismic intensity scale is 7. And every intensity part of that intensity scale, you multiply it by 1.428 to get Richter scale equivalent. Japan quake evacuation. Look at Shitsu right there. Kishida, which is the current idiot minister of Japan, the useless puppet of Japan. They go through a lot of them, don't they? Thank goodness the last one got shot, or the second last one got shot and doesn't exist anymore. At least there's some relief for the victims. Japan's quake with Shinzo Abe. It was one of the best days of my life to see that piece of shit destroyed. He poisoned our entire planet with radioactive food. And that's forever now. He destroyed probably 500 million people's health. The despicable, hateful, disgusting, parasitic industry. Japan's quake evacuees urged to leave secondary sites soon, and hotels want to free up rooms for the tourists. So here was the Japanese government say they can move in the hotel, we won't charge them, we'll pay for the hotel. The hotel is getting top dollars. They want them out so they can bring in gullible tourists to eat the radioactive rice. Because that's what they're up to, the poisoning the tourists. With around 8 billion pounds of rice a year that they won't eat themselves, they're shipping it worldwide, and they're also feeding it to the tourists. The whole story is insane. And it's unbelievably complicated for a newbie to figure out on their own. It's just simply never going to happen. An overwhelming number of evacuees wish to move into temporary housings. Wish? I suppose they do. The prefectural governments, now they allegedly had 27,000 homes, right? Plan to start construction on 3,000 units of housings by the end of March. In an earthquake zone where they just had a 3,000-year-old fault line detonate. Why would you move people back into that shithole where pre-2020 was 20 earthquakes a year, small ones. For the last 3 years, they're getting an average of 8,000 small earthquakes a year. They knew that fault line was going to rupture. So why would you move them back into that place? There's 7,000 applications of people that are well-disciplined slaves that would move back into that earthquake night disaster where they had over 1,500 aftershocks, 1,400 landslides. The roads are torn apart all over the peninsula. It's unbelievable damage. 40,000 homes destroyed, but we got no evidence. Many of the available private sector rental accommodation public housing facilities are located outside the prefecture. Well, you see 27,400 homes rented, and now this is what they told you just to pacify you, to make you complacent so you go away. So it looks like they were doing their job, right? They're the good guy. Now they're at the airports asking for donations like Hare Krishnas, and they don't have the 27,400 homes for the victims that don't have homes anymore. But there was actually 40,000 homes destroyed. Right? They'll tell you anything to get you to look away. Just like they've done with the nuclear industry, right? Do you really think that they're in the fuel pool or the building of Reactor 4? Do you really think they're faking that because that's fucking harmless? Or benign or innocuous? Really? Do you get what's going on here? We're being poisoned. There's 1,800 diseases. In other words, the medical textbook. Heart, liver, lung, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, adrenaline. And as you get older, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, diabetes. You see all that just explode? Down syndrome. These, because you compromise your immune system, you produce, for children in particular and adults, but in particular for little animals and insects and birds and mammals and small children, you're talking about mutating their stem cells forever, immediately, and you're producing radioactive hormones. There's no way that they're going to have a healthy life. You're going to destroy their health. Again, here's another story. The aftermath of Noto Peninsula earthquake, the Ishikawa prefecture. And they're showing you a crop shot of the 200 homes that burnt. And this is the original footage. Nothing new. Why, 41 days later, are we still getting the same footage? The devastation was immense, with approximately 55,000 houses suffering damage or complete destruction. And this is all the way up to Niigata prefecture. And the Fukushima prefecture had 7 operating nuclear power plants at the time. We don't know nothing about it. All of these were severely shook by a 3,000-year-old fault line that finally ruptured. And it could be 4,000-year-olds. This is extraordinary stuff. And so everybody's sitting in the dark with their one thumb in their mouth, one other one up their butt. The earthquake has led to the generation of an estimated 2.44 million tons of waste. That's equal to 2 rows of traffic across America or Canada of 1-ton trucks of waste, of destruction. So you're talking about a significant amount, but we don't have any evidence of it. They won't show us any pictures. And they're not going to show you 40 days later. We still haven't got any pictures of Shika, which had a nuclear fuel pool meltdown, we believe. The task is critical as failure to dispose of the waste could severely hinder the reconstruction efforts. Why would you reconstruct in an area that just had a 4,000-year-old fault line rupture? And they say it wasn't a very big rupture on top of that. They had 8,000 earthquakes, aftershocks, for the last 3 years, when it used to be 20 a year. So if a geologist doesn't know that that's a stupid spot to be, and they remain silent, then they're monsters. That's all these people are. They go and get a university degree, they go to work for this industries, and they're the worst humans that God ever created. Comprehensive nuclear safety review needed after central Japan quake. Japan, a country prone to earthquakes, once again be reminded of the risks associated with continued operating nuclear power plants. The Noto Peninsula earthquake caused damage to the Hakunuri electric power company's Shika nuclear power station located in Ishikawa prefecture, town of Shika, and where the intensity in that community reached a full 7 on Japan's seismic intensity Shindu scale. But they don't tell you that the Shindu scale only goes to 7. Like, the best thing that can happen to these is that 10,000 Japanese patriots kick the shit out of them every day for the rest of their lives. These are monsters. As soon as somebody goes to university to get a degree to go to work for the government, you should just stick them in a mental institution with a drip in their arm. They're scum. They look like me or you. They give them a lot of money so they can almost assimilate into society like me or you. They got none of the attributes of what it is to be a human. Nothing. The most worthless fucking scum you can imagine. The 2 nuclear reactors at the plant were not operating at the time, and a serious situation such as a radiation leak was avoided. The fuel pools are at the top of the buildings. First off, they're hemorrhaging radiation. And every time you hear the word leak, you should be humiliated that they call themselves humans. There was no avoiding the radiation leaks. And see, you got me doing it. There is no such thing as a leak. Following the 2011 Great East Japan earthquake, rendering emergency generators unstable, reactors lost their cooling functions. 2011 we're talking about, with hydrogen explosions. The hydrogen was the zirconium cladding of the fuel rods melting down. That was a nuclear meltdown causes the explosion, not a hydrogen. And the hydrogen from nuclear is completely different than the hydrogen that we normally associate. Hydrogen explosion dispersed a huge amount of radioactive material. Right, these garbage cans, like when you pick up 30 million 1-ton bags, and your food is banned by 55 countries for over a decade, and just blowing it off as a huge amount of radiation, when you got, it's just, the whole story is unbelievable. How this industry is so good at lying. They know exactly how to lie. That's the only thing that they seem capable of. I want to give you an idea of what we're talking about. So Japan had an extra 865,000 cancers in the first year. Cancer is not the only illness, and not everybody had health care. Not everybody was diagnosed. Like, a spike of 865,000 cancers in the first year is just one of the many, many attributes we've seen. The bottom depiction is 26 days after the tsunami. It's a radioactive plume covering the entire planet. This is reactor 3, which ejected its fuel pools and its reactor core out of the buildings. We've never seen anything like it. In each of the buildings at Fukushima, and there was 4 meltdowns and 8 fuel pools that melted down. Each of the reactor cores, not counting the fuel pools, are 100 Chernobyls, the animosity equivalent in uranium and plutonium. Because Chernobyl was a graphite reactor. However, when the roads are severed by the quake, residents have no option but to evacuate on foot, meaning they can't avoid exposure to radiation. Well, you can't avoid exposure to radiation because it covers the whole friggin' planet in 27 days. So imagine how bad it is in ground zero. So, and they know exactly what they're doing. They know exactly what's going to happen when you have a meltdown or your releases. You contaminate everybody. This is what they do sex ratio studies on countries after nuclear accident. Not the community, but countries. Which means more males than females is what they're looking for, which is an attribute of severe poisoning. And what that means is less births, right? Because you got more males than females. But that's not going to be applicable just to humans. That's 100% applicable to every species on the planet. Okay, I'm just going to play you a little video. I want you to meet scumbag nuclear industry. And there's just one video in particular. Kathleen Higley at this point is on the stage. And she's explaining to the press club in Washington about the International Atomic Energy Agency, ERPA, UNSCLEAR, the IPRC, etc., which is the radiation. These are all United Nations, by the way. Same organization. And she talks about how there's 100 experts, gray-haired experts worldwide, that fuck you over. That sets the policies for your schools, your communities, your hospitals. And these are all, we've flushed all of these people out. These are notorious, despicable, hateful, lying scum that have destroyed everybody's future. And it's time to start holding somebody accountable. And I'm going to play that for you. I'm going to adjust the volume for you in real time.
When I was trying to pull this talk together, not only will I sort of get a little philosophical about the impacts and the like and try to put things in context, but I also wanted to talk a little bit about who are these radiation experts that get trotted out in events like this or that get to participate in various activities and analysis to make pronouncements about is something safe or not safe. And if you look, you'll see organizations that are often represented. The ICRP, International Commission on Radiological Protection, a premier organization. You'll see UNSCEAR and ERPA. So UNSCEAR is the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation. ERPA, the International Radiation Protection Association. The IAEA and some of its folks, the International Atomic Energy Agency. Our own U.S. NCRP. And then there are a number of other organizations. So there's PAHO, there's the Health Physics Society, there's World Health Organization. All of these will bring in, as necessary, experts to speak to you on issues related to radiation protection, radiation safety, and impacts. But if you go a little deeper and you start looking at these organizations, the ICRP, for example, very well known. It's been operating nearly 100 years, not quite. Main commission, 10 people. It's got 5 standing committees, so it's 100-ish folks. I lead one of the 5 committees. If you look at the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation that looked at the effects from Chernobyl, from Fukushima, from other areas, and that has about 30, roughly, countries that are represented in that group. If you start teasing through these pictures, you're going to see the same people on every one of those organizations. So the same people from ICRP are on UNSCEAR, they're in ERPA. If you look at the NCRP, again, the U.S. organization that advises the country on radiation protection issues, it's 100 people, a lot of gray-haired 100 people. And most of them are part of UNSCEAR, are part of ERPA, are part of ICRP, participate in IAEA. So the result, or the real world, is that there's not that many folks that really do radiation safety, radionuclide transport, dose calculations, all of this in the world. It's a pretty small club, and we wear 20 hats. Today I put on 3 pins, and I could put on a whole bunch more, but Health Physics Society, ICRP, Certified Health Physicist, I've got NCRP on there, I've done IAEA, and so the point is, we're a small group, you should cherish us. So
These are, let me bring in the other screen for you. He's with TEPCO. He's with Berkeley University. When they done the kelp watch, he came out with the results before they got a single sample into the ocean. Said there was nothing. You see Miles O'Brien there, he's what we call the one-armed bandit. He lost his arm. He went to Japan. He flew over to Malaysia to get his arm taken off. He was most likely poisoned because he wouldn't give up memory cards and pictures that he wasn't allowed to take. The girl next to him is the former NRC. And then the lady, the piece of shit stood up there, Kathleen Higley, she murders children in hospitals with radiation for a hobby and then tells lies to destroy everybody else's future. Commission backs nuclear energy would launch a small modular reactor alliance. The small modular reactor doesn't exist anywhere on the entire planet, and they're having memorandums of understandings that they're not going to look at any other technology on a small modular reactors. And the last company, NuScale, the only one with an actual application into the regulatory agency for the licensing, their reactor, small modular reactor, was going to produce 480 watts. There were 6 of them. And when you put them together, that was 480 megawatts. And a large reactor is a gigawatt, which is 1,000 megawatts. And so you can build one of them for about $6 billion. There's 6 small modular reactors with half the capacity. We're going to come in around $20 billion. And finally, the investors came to their senses. And we've been telling them for the last 5 years to abandon that idiot machine that's just there to destroy you coming up with solutions. The nuclear industry is there simply to murder you at your supermarkets and in your homes because they pollute your air with anthropogenic man-made radioactive fallout. When you breathe it in, your body attacks it every second for the rest of your life. Brussels hopes to have the first small-scale nuclear power station in operation in the next decade, with a newly established industry alliance key to that ambition. Again, you're talking about, instead of geothermal, which already exists, you're talking about putting all your eggs in a basket for some technology that doesn't exist. It's like saying, we're going to invent something in the future, so give us all your money right now. We're not sure what it is, but we're going to invent it. But geothermal exists, and geothermal can be up and running in 2 years instead of 12 to 20. And you didn't pay them because you pay for these new plants on your power bills. The money is raised automatically. And then rather than building something that we already have, and like the whole story is insane because last year renewables were 507 gigawatts came online in 12 months. In 80 years, we only got 365 gigawatts of nuclear. You're going to have to build 3,000 small modular reactors to even try to make a dent in the energy worldwide. Because you call it decarbonization. By the way, as I showed you at the very beginning, if you decarbonate another 0.02%, plants won't grow. You know, when we had dinosaurs, then the carbon in the air was around 2%. That's why you had all these giant animals, giant creatures, massive trees, beautiful. The whole planet was covered in green. Fukushima, which is a nuclear wasteland that's abandoned. Let me go backwards. Japan's nuclear power plants are strung along the country's coast to secure a large amount of water. necessary for the cooling of the reactor cores. And they boil 1 million gallons a minute, 4,500 tons a minute. If you take a glass of water, it has 1 billion creatures in it. And 75 to 100 million of them are the phytoplankton, the basis of the food chain, the basis of the oxygen chain, the basis of the carbon sequestering chain. So you're talking about 1 billion creatures in every glass of water per minute. So there's 16 million glasses of water a minute. So multiply 16 million times 1 billion creatures. And that's what each plant, and there's 407 currently on the planet, is massacring every minute. The very soup of life. Every facet of the nuclear industry is destructive. There isn't a single facet of the nuclear industry that isn't geared towards destroying everything's and everybody's health, wrecking the 8 million species, and destroying your ability to have a future without being severely sick or injured from the radioactive fallout. Opinion, Noto Quake. Fukushima meltdown memoir proves once more nuclear power is not for Japan. So they roll out the stupidest people that don't have a fucking clue what they're talking about, and they're the arbiters of everybody's future. The Fukushima, which is a nuclear wasteland abandoned for almost 13 years now, within sight of the nuclear meltdowns, and the hospital is 4 kilometers away. The community is only 2. So they abandoned the people at the hospital. There was around 90 Alzheimer's dementia patients were left behind. They say it triggered a triple meltdown, not meltdowns, but meltdown. And so whenever you see those connotations without the proper grammar, that framing of the narrative, a triple, it was 4 nuclear meltdowns and 8 fuel pools that melted down. Each fuel pool would have been around 5 reactor cores, and they're just as important and pertinent as a running reactor. They're already gone through a chain reaction. And you don't even put nuclear. I had to go look for the word nuclear. Triple nuclear meltdown, and it should be with an S, meltdowns. And we see this over and over and over. Their refusal to use grammar when that's extremely important, right? And the patients began what would be a wandering journey. The explosions of the #1 reactor building occurred while efforts were underway to transport 40 bedridden patients to a helicopter landing site. Along with a loud bang, smoke rose from the nuclear power plant. And several employees witnessed what appeared to be ash falling. This was radioactive fuel rods that were atomized and aerosol ionized and radiated everything around them, and that was what you call the ash. These are lethal doses falling. Having escaped to a public facility 50 kilometers away, it was discovered that evacuees had been exposed to radiation and that the entire facility was designated as a contaminated area. Again, right, refusing to use the proper grammar. These are nuclear, not contaminated areas, these are nuclear wastelands. You're going to go there, you breathe in a single breath, and you're going to get sick for the rest of your life eventually. And just a single atom in your body could take 10, 20, 30, 40 years, but if it's sequestering your muscles, your organs, and your bones, you are going to get a massive tumor. It will destroy your health along the way. And because you're breathing in so much of this, because there were so many plumes covering the friggin' planet, here's another model from TEPCO of the radioactive, I can't remember if this is the americium or neptunium rather, 241. I apologize, I'll get a better model. There you go, I got the right one. Yeah, neptunium-239 dispersal based on TEPCO's numbers, which were based on Vending. They weren't based on the actual destroyed reactor. Like Arnie Gunnarsson, for instance, he made the fuel pool racks that the fuel assemblies would have sat into at the top of the building. I put his picture to your right at the top of the building where the fuel pools are too. The building to your left is the stump of the ghost of Reactor 4. Listen to Arnie for 1 second.
The division I ran built nuclear fuel racks for boiling water reactors exactly like Fukushima.
So he made the racks for the assemblies. If he doesn't know that the fuel pools are gone, who would? Now, he made them for 70 nuclear power plants in America that are exact identical reactors. Hang on here. Let's keep going here. About 9 kilometers from the nuclear plant, a hospital in Nami, which is a nuclear wasteland, was abandoned for 7 years, should never have been open. Once you abandon a community because of radiation, you can never go back. But yet everyone in the community, they're trying to manipulate, deceive, coerce, and even force by taking away people's payments for having their land, their homes, their graveyards destroyed by the radiation. Take that away, they got nowhere to go. Taking patients outside the hospital where treatment cannot be provided would endanger their lives. Well, you're in a nuclear wasteland. The doctors didn't understand the nuclear fallout. The director of the hospital wouldn't do the evacuation because now he has no power no more. He's no longer a director of the hospital. And so he thought he can bully first responders into keeping the victims there, and he did. But he doomed every one of them, and not only that, the community was abandoned, right? As soon as you give someone a title of that works for the government, it seems like now they like to tell you how good they're going to be and how they're going to help the communities, and they're going to be a beaming light of the government agency. And the minute they get the job, if you say anything to them, they'll jump on you, punch you in the fucking head, and no cop will ever arrest them. The memoir depicts fear, and he can't be fired. The real-life monsters, actual monsters. The memoirs depicts fear of. That's what the nuclear industry shows us over and over and over and over and over. The memoir depicts fear of invisible radiation, harsh reality of being abandoned amid the chaos. Well, of course you're abandoned. It's a nuclear wasteland. And the director, of all people, should have known the difference. Struggling now with the aftermath of January the 1st earthquake and tsunami stands the Shika nuclear power plant. The Shika nuclear power plant, it was somewhat away from the seismic zone, fortunately. No, the earthquake in Shika community was a 7 out of 7 in Japan's Shindo seismic intensity scale of 7, which is the equivalent of a 10 out of 10 on the Richter scale. And the reason you use the Shindo scale is to hide these events. And it's very effective, isn't it? Because people become stupid when they got to do their own math. The reactors were out of service at the time and were safe. The fuel pools, if you lose the water, they melt down within 50 minutes. And you're talking around 10 reactor cores will melt down. And so these people that write these stories, they're put up in the major medias because that helps fucking confuse people. It's an industry of goblins and scumbags and degenerates. That's what nuclear is. The locals are enduring severe hardship due to the tremblers. Like, these are not tremblers. These are earthquakes. You had 40,000 houses dropped. You had another 15,000 destroyed. Severely damaged, I mean. You had 40,000 that are destroyed. You had 27,000 homes rented, according to the stupid idiot government 2 weeks ago. And now we find out they don't actually have that. It was all just to get you to go away and stop looking. And once again, they've been abandoned. Imagine leaving 30,000 people with a glass, not a glass, but a cup, a paper cup, not a glass of water, but a paper cup, and a slice of bread. Not butter, not jam, not peanut butter on it, but a slice of bread for 18 days. It's a worthless society. That's a worthless society. Fukushima meltdown memoir proves once more nuclear power is not for Japan. That's the only thing they got right in the entire friggin' story. When it comes to nuclear, they can't tell a story. The idea of the story is to lie to you. The idea is not to tell you a story. The idea is to make nuclear look good, because and every day we do a 2-hour show, basically 5 days a week, of them trying to make the nuclear industry look good, and we challenge the lies. If we got a lie, then we'll try to challenge it. There's nobody that's ever done it in history, and you can understand why, because it would drive the average person fucking insane. Lucky for me, I got enough hate to keep me going on nuclear. The hate I got for nuclear will keep me going like an atomic fucking clock. Huge cliff found on the seabed near the epicenter of the 3/11, the March 2011, March 11, 2011 tsunami and earthquake in Japan, right? So they found a big cliff off the coastline with an American submersible. And it's considered basically like a fresh cliff. And in geological terminologies, that's something under 1,000 years, basically. This one in particular is almost 13 years old. Here we go, keep going here. The height of the ground uplift was estimated to be around 60 meters. So the Earth dropped on one side 120 or 180 feet. 180 feet. So on the other side, it basically lifted up 60. So then you had this huge displacement for about 200 miles. And that caused the tsunami. Residents had little time to escape the tsunami. This was January 1st, 2024, this year. This was last month. I have a few problems here. I apologize. You might notice I'm a little bit busy here this morning. I was shaving. Now I use an electric shaver. But I was using a razor to do some trimming, right? And I also have a trimmer, but I was too stupid to pick it up. And I hooked my ear. Man, that thing is bleeding like you can't believe here this morning. Still bleeding. I'm trying to deal with that in the background. I just stuffed a bunch of paper in my ear, or the tissues, to try to let it do its thing. You know how you get like a cut on your chin, you put a little piece of paper on to stop the bleeding? That don't seem to be working for me this morning. Residents had little time to escape the tsunami on January 1st, 2024. This is in Suzu. And I know people weren't expecting my live stream to be super early in the morning for most people. But I'll explain that at the end of the video. But I basically woke up and said, well, I got to do the show right now, because I got other things I got to get done during the day. And I'll talk about that at the end of the show here. And so I don't expect people to find me. Don't feel bad if you're just finding me. And I'm talking to Sue there right now. Sue feels bad. Yeah, no, I don't. I put the show here with the intentions that folks could find the show later and watch it at their leisure. I wasn't really expecting too many people to find the show. I know, because like different parts of the world is different times, so some people would find me, right? But I don't want to be doing a show, because I usually do my show 10 p.m. in my time, and then the show is over at midnight. And if I don't do it now, I won't get the show done tonight, I don't think. And I don't want what happened last week where I missed the show, because the industry deserves someone to shit on them every fucking day if possible, right? Excuse the language. I'm in one of those colorful moods this morning, I noticed. Suzu City, the mayor of that, told everybody on the first 3 days that 90% of the houses, of 5,000 houses, had completely collapsed, were destroyed, which is 4,500 homes. That's not counting the businesses. And you know, on a peninsula where there's over 55,000 houses severely damaged or destroyed, we assume there's around 40,000 destroyed from the narrative they've been putting out. How come we haven't seen any of this stuff? How come we have never seen anything, only a bit of tsunami area in Suzu? The tsunami, the first wave, which hit the shores less than a minute after earthquake, showed once again that every second counts when fleeing to safety is a disaster. So some parts of that coastline got hit within 1 minute of the earthquake. And after the two strong quakes Ichimachi began preparing to evacuate, he heard the disaster preventive administration radio announcing a tsunami warning. It took him 5 minutes to pick up his belongings and change in the long boots. So he was very lucky to make it editor. Unbelievably lucky to survive it. You can't go waiting. This story is insane. Mutated super wolves spotted in Chernobyl. Now, these are migratory wolves. This industry has no end to its scumbaggery. So this was a biologist. Wolves roaming the forbidden zone. So, like, whenever we hear about animals around Chernobyl, it's always migratory animals. It's not little birds. It's not insects. It's not frogs. It's not the moles. It's not the rats. It's not the mice. It's not the shrews. It's not the indigenous population, because they don't exist there. The wolves are roaming it because they're migratory. Around the exploded Chernobyl nuclear reactor appears to be immune to increased radioactive radiation. Like, your body treats, and the animals are the same way, they treat radiation, or they treat natural stuff as homeostasis. So potassium, magnesium, iron, carbon, everything else. We're acclimated to that through genetic superior selection. We're born, that is us. That's the stardust itself. Man-made radiation is not created by the stars or the suns or anything else. That's why we call that uranium, plutonium type, the fission products that are coming from a chain reaction, anthropogenic man-made radiation. And because our immune system doesn't have an immune trigger to defend against it. Wolves roaming the forbidden zone around the exploded Chernobyl nuclear reactors appear to be immune to the increased radioactive radiation. Appeared to be immune to the increased, so your body, when radiation gets in your body, it doesn't matter who you are, you can't be immune to it. Your body attacks with white blood cells. It's pulsing energy almost at the speed of light every second, these atoms, these physical atoms. And you can put 200 million atoms on the head of a needle, but you can't see it. So if you take one of these atoms, and they never travel alone. So if you've got one of these atoms in your body, sequestered in your body attacks it. Now, not only attacks that, it detonates every second, almost at the speed of light, which destroys cells and chromosomes and DNA in every direction, and it wrecks that. Your body has to repair that also every second. It does that with white blood cells, but it can't keep up with that amount. But then a second later, it detonates again. And so when you got thousands of these things in your body is producing white blood cells, more white blood cells eventually than you have red blood cells. And it'll do that for the rest of your life. In other words, you got leukemia. That's what you call leukemia. You have more white blood cells than red blood cells. A discovery that could also be important in the fight against cancer. So finding wolves, which are migratory and travel chasing large packs of other migratory animals, to suggest that the reason that they're somehow immune is the most idiotic thing imaginable. It's really, you got to be either a moron, and these people are not morons, or degenerate, despicable monsters and scumbags trying to dress up a pig as somebody's wife. The forbidden zone is clearly not uninhabitable for animals. Wild boar, deer, moose, and wolves. Well, what about the frogs and the ants and the bees and the birds and the insects and the biota, the ecosystem itself? So they only talk about the big, large migratory animals, which have incredible amount of defenses, but not even mitigations. They can tolerate a lot of radiation. It takes a lot longer for it to manifest because they don't live for a long period of time. A lot of the typical trappings that happens to humans won't manifest or be diagnosed. And so we've covered this so many times, and it's always the exact same animals that you talk about. And then try to use that to quantify that nuclear has some redeeming qualities. American biologist Cara Love, a piece of shit, despicable human, had made a unremarkable discovery about the latter species. The wolves living near Chernobyl had evolved in this version, the pro-nuclear industry, that they can survive a heavily radioactive environment. And this is a ludicrous assertion. It's a despicable fucking thing to say. It's despicable. And whenever I see stuff like that, and they say similar to cancer patients, that they have somehow radioactive immunity. These are monsters. These should be in jail for at least 30 years for even suggesting a statement like that. And then why are they using millirims? We don't use millirims anymore. We use microsieverts, millisieverts, and sieverts. And listen, what they got in their body is not microsieverts or millisieverts. It's physical atoms, a.k.a. becquerels, which is an atomic decay per second. And that's known as counts per minute. How many counts per minute? So to suggest that they got millirims, and each millirim is equal to 10 microsieverts. The microsievert is equal to 750 atoms. And each atom is pulsing energy at the speed of light and has to be dealt with every second for the rest of your life by white blood cells, which compromises your immune system and leaves you more susceptible to pathogens and viruses that were normally harmless. In the zone where the wolves are located, they're migratory. There's no, like they're at the top of the food chain, so they don't have many, there's not many predators on wolves besides bears. And there's a radioactive radiation of 11.28 millirims. That's about 6 times more than the human safety. Again, there is no safe limit because they're conflating anthropogenic man-made radiation with natural, harmless, stupid, innocuous, everyday radiation that has no adverse side effects on the human whatsoever because you're already acclimated to genetic superior selection. And so the people that wrote the story are the worst of the worst that human can offer. This is the nuclear industry who wrote the story, obviously. Most likely a nuclear lobbying group like the World Nuclear News sent it to that media. They put their author's name on it. And I don't believe there was a name on this story. Let me go back to this story for 1 second. Yeah, I don't remember seeing an author's name on this story. These are what you call worthless humans. The people that write this stuff. This is worthless humans. Because the wolves have lived in the area for several generations, their genes have adapted to the conditions. I've never heard a story like this before, by the way, where they suggest anything became immune besides... Well, I have. Right? There's the Wolfman, like cartoon. There's the Hulk. There's Spider-Man. That's the only ones I've heard with these particular attributes. Their genes have adapted to the conditions. Like, it doesn't work that way, right? Poison is poison, and because nobody has an autoimmune trigger to defend against it, you can't just conjure that up with a little bit of fucking voodoo. According to Love, who's not even a radiation expert, so all of their assertions are based upon her. And so whoever she is funding her, she went along with to get the funding. She knows this is very dangerous narrative that they're putting out, right? To get people to believe that there's an immunity and somehow this is going to help cancer. Comparable to that, an immune system comparable to that of cancer patients undergoing radiation. Like, your immune system is completely compromised. If you're getting the radiation therapy, and I can take you down that fucking road, and trust me, you don't want to go down that road with me today. What radiation does to people in hospitals. You do not want to go down that road with me today on that story. Oh, too late. We're going down that fucking road now. That just pisses me off that somebody can be that evil to suggest. And so they're setting people up to take radiation. So there's something going on in the background we're not aware of. Let me take you down that road for a hee-haw. Let me show you what they do to you in hospital with radiation. So they're saying that the victims are immune to radiation. The immune system is comparable to that of a cancer patient undergoing radiation, that the wolves have adapted. They have adapted. Have adapted their genes. Let me grab these two. Okay, here we go. So, introducing radiation injuries, another silent epidemic. Radiation injuries to the visual pathways. Radiation injuries to the heart. And so you're going to get so-called radiation therapy, and over the next 6 months, your whole body falls apart. And here's what happens to your body. You get cardiac injuries following treatment for breast cancers. Radiation-induced. Radiation-induced kidney injuries. Radiation-induced hypoxia. Because you have no red blood cells, only white blood cells. Blood spinal cord barrier disruption, central nervous system radiation injuries. Radiation-induced bowel injuries. Sounds like a hoot, right? Radiation-induced lung injuries. Laser treatment of severe radiation injuries lower intestinal tracts. Laser treatment. Again, right, they use voodoo to... Radiation-induced kidney injuries. Radiation breast litigation injuries, central nervous system radiation injuries, injuries to the cranial nerves from the proton beam. And so you get all this radiation bombardment. Here's what happened to your body, what I'm showing you right now. You might get rid of one tumor, now you got 25 other tumors in your bodies. Radiation injuries to the head and neck, radiation injury, what's called brain injury, brain necrosis. Radiation-induced lung injuries. And all these are different studies. Small bowels, radiation injuries. Like the list is so long, you can't keep up with it. Brain necrosis. That's a nasty. That's how they kill children, right? Radiation-induced normal tissue injuries. Radiation-induced rectal injury. Yay! Spinal cord recovery from radiation injuries. Radiation. Everything you hear of radiation, you got radiation for one tumor, and now it fucked up your entire body forever. And it's shocking. I'm not going to take you through all of it today because I got too much to get through, but it's shocking. It's terrifying. Radiation injuries to the aorta, and which is your heart valves. Patient with radiation-induced bowel injuries. Radiation injuries to the central nervous system. Radiation rectal injuries. Radiation lung injuries. Acute injury of the salivary glands during radiation therapy. Radiation-induced liver diseases. Radiation bile duct injuries. Radiation-induced acute brain radiation injuries. Experimental study. So they use radiation on your radiation injuries too, right? This is sick people, man. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced... Oh yeah, brain injuries, radiation-induced brainstem injuries after intense radiation therapy. You know why they call it radiation therapy? Because there's no other way they can get you there to murder you. They just call it therapy. Oh, that's great, let's go. Fuck me up, come on, man, I want my fuck up dose of radiation. Bring it on, baby. Language decline after brain radiation therapy. Like using, and they've been doing this since the very inception. There used to be radioactive suppositories. No matter what was wrong with you, well, you need a radioactive suppository up your butthole. You think I'm joking? They were doing radioactive soap for children, and women in particular, radioactive makeup, radioactive lipstick. Like, you're one sick puppy when you're doing that to the most vulnerable of society. The whole legacy of the nuclear industry quackery, radiation medicine quackery, it's hard to comprehend how every hospital is murdering your loved one's radiation and you're still fucking sound asleep. Radiation-induced brain injuries after radiosurgery of the brain, radiosurgery. And these are just human experiments, what we're talking about. All of these are human experiments. All the radiation they do to you in the hospital is a radiation experiment. You got to sign a piece of paper first off before they'll do it to you. It says you can't hold them accountable. Your family can't sue them or hold them accountable. And then they'll treat you like a fucking lab rat until you're dead. That's what it's all about. And if you don't want to accept it, it's because you're fucking gullible. Study on radiation-induced brain injury after. radiotherapy. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Jesus, I never heard of that one before. Novel clinical approaches to reduce radiation brain injuries. Yeah, I'll give you more radiation here, more radiation there. Clinical approaches reduce brain injuries. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Never heard of that one before. Brain tumors from radiation injuries. Never heard of that one before. Radiation-induced brain injuries. Never heard of that study before. Oh, yeah, don't forget about the radiation-induced brain injuries. Oh, did I mention radiation brain injuries? A test battery for the assessment of the radiation-induced brain injuries. Don't worry, they can treat it with more fucking radiation. They can only treat you till you die. Oh, too bad he died. Next. Microwave-induced brain injuries. Injury to the brain from the radiation therapy. Brain radionecrosis after adjuvant radiation therapy. Cognitive impairment in the young patients treated with radiation therapy for a brain tumor. Aging mass detections of radiation-induced brain injuries. Radiation-induced soft tissues injuries to the head and neck. The people working in your hospital in the radiation department are, they just go along to get along. They know the difference. They know that the minute you go in there and they stick that fucking radiation around you, you're a done duck. So why are you doing it? Like the studies were showing, hang on a second. For the radiation chemo, what they call radio chemo, and they call it therapy. How can you be this cruel? How can people just sit in silence? How does that fucking work? So there was a study that was repeated. I got it right here for you. 3% efficiency of chemotherapy treatment and cancer cures. It was discovered, that's the wrong one. The original conclusion based on facts, 1985, and subsequent and current validations of these conclusions, 2004, so the study was repeated in 2004, showed that there was a 2.1% in the United States and a 2.3% survival of more than 5 years in Australia. And so the conclusion was you're better off not getting any chemo, and that, you know what the percentage of cancer misdiagnosis is? It's 3%. So the survival rate is only 2.3%. In other words, they were basically the people that didn't have cancer in the first place. And that it was discovered that the human kidneys are at least 50 times less efficient than the animal kidneys at removing plutonium, for instance. And so if you get plutonium in your body, even a speck of it, then you're going to get 3 different tumors. You're going to get a lung, a liver, and a bone tumors. And the majority of you will die from the bone tumors, but you're going to have lung tumors and liver tumors also. Now, the animal studies, 100% of the animals got those 3 tumors. But the animal's kidneys are 50 times more efficient at removing the radiation than the human is. In other words, the humans are 50 times more vulnerable than the animals, and all the animals died in all the studies within 5 years. Let me go back to the radiation injuries to the nervous system, radiation-induced skin necrosis, radiation, the death of most of all the cells in the organs or tissues, radiation injuries to the spinal cords, radiation-induced death from radiation therapy, brain radionecrosis after adjuvant radiation therapy, acute radiation injuries, radiation-induced lung injuries from radiation therapy, late radiation injuries after radiotherapy of breast cancers. Like, so getting radiation, I'm just trying to warn you, I'm trying to impress upon you that what you don't know will fuck you up and your loved ones forever, and you'll liquidate your assets trying to give them or yourself some comforts, and you can't win that fucking battle. It's designed to make you do exactly that. And they're there to pick up all your shit for free. There's a huge industry there to fucking wreck you and your health and take your assets on top of that. This is an industry. Nuclear is an industry of nothing but degenerate scum in every facet and every sense. And there's 9,000 facets to nuclear, for fuck's sakes. 9,000 facets. 9,000 ways they can murder you and your loved ones on top of that. I can take you down a road that you won't sleep for a fucking week after, because that's what happens to me when I go down it, and I'm not doing it to you today. So this study on the wolves, suggesting that wolves are fucking immune to it, and that therefore it's good, you can use the same technique now on cancer patients, it's so despicable, it's so unconscionable, it's so heartbreaking to see anybody come out and make these types of assertions. The wolves may even have developed certain genes that appeared resilient to the increase. They may have. Oh, they may have grown an extra fucking leg. They might rejuvenate their fucking legs when they lose one. Like, shut up, you piece of shit, who done that? Let's move on before I start snapping here, as if I haven't already. Washington House advances bill giving nuclear energy manufacturers more time for tax exemption. Well, they got to give them every break in the book so they can murder you and your loved ones. And if you think for a second that's not going on, then you're a very disciplined sucker. New method to more acutely spot underground nuclear tests. Again, like, they done a study in Canada. Let's forget Australia. Australia is not even a scumbag society when it comes to nuclear. They're like, and when I say stuff like that, they're all scumbag society. You know, if you're here at all for any amount of time, you know that. But the British and the Australian and the Canadians, obviously, Canada's not even a country. Canada's a nuclear playground. The nuclear industry captured this country a long time ago. But anyway, the Australian pro-nuclear community is unbelievable, despicable. It's unbelievable how heartless and soulless these people actually are. They're trying to get nuclear industry fired up in Australia, and there's no lie too big to tell. There really isn't. And so far, the Australians have resisted them, which is interesting, because the majority in Australia have the mental capacity of a 9-year-old, kind of like where I'm to. The new method could help international observers better identify tests carried out by countries or actors known to possess nuclear weapons, as well as provide new information. So there was a study done in Canada where they showed anti-neutrinos from a reactor could be detected 150 miles away and a mile into the Canadian Shield, which is rocks. So if you go a mile deep into the rocks, which is what they've done, they can still detect the anti-neutrinos from a nuclear power plant 150 miles away in pure water. It's amazing, right? And so the idea of that story is to invoke fear into you that the nuclear industry needs endless amounts of money to do experiments, to stop the bad actors from getting nuclear weapons, and the terrorists are going to get you, like North Korea. North Korea, who's haven't attacked anybody in 70 years. And were prisoners of Japan for 50 years before that, were occupied by Japan. They've never been free in 120 years. And the United Nations went in there 70 years ago and napalmed, burnt every single building in every single community with napalm. They dropped more ordnance, munitions, than the entire World War II in this little tiny country. Because they're a mountainous, mineral-rich country. They wanted all the natural resources. And that country's been ostracized from the world for 120 years. And it's amazing that country fought them with sticks until they finally drove these invaders out, which was United Nations. It was 16. And if you ever watch MASH 4077, that was to dress up what United Nations had done, to try to make them look like they're the good guy. And it worked. The majority of people think United Nations has some redeeming quality. They're very disciplined suckers. Southeastern Illinois is suddenly a likely first-strike nuclear target. Now, to say a nuclear target, this, again, the people that write these stories are always like the most childlike people you're going to come across. So they say because there's an earthquake fault line there, that a nuclear strike on the fault line would cause more damage. This is what they're saying, right? So a nuclear strike on an earthquake fault line is not going to separate the fault line. You're going to need to put down hundreds and if not thousands of nukes in the fault line and detonate them all at one time for that to work. It's not like you got two trees and if you put a winch on it, you can snap it and get it to fall off, right? You're talking about fault lines that are under pressures that dwarfs anything a nuclear can do. U.S. nuclear stock prices passed below 5-day moving average of 0.06 cents a stock. And so that company makes radiation detecting equipment, which is expected to be a huge industry, and it is right now. It's a huge industry in the future too. But somehow they just got on the stock exchange, and that's unbelievable low stocks. So you can basically buy all the stocks in that company for about $12,000 right now, and you probably end up with around $100 million in a few years. And don't worry though, the nuclear industry's already went and bought all those stocks yesterday morning. Why NASA prefers nuclear reactors over solar power on the moon. Again, when you talk about the moon, remember last time they were there was 1972. Okay, well, Americans did want to go back. So how come Russia didn't go there? How come China didn't go there? How come India doesn't have a base up there? How come nobody has a base station on the moon? So they want to put in, because they don't get full sun all the time, they said, where they want to put a base. So they want to basically go to the darker section of the moon. So then the question is, if you look at how, because the Earth holds the moon in place, and the Earth goes around the sun, but it takes around 27 days for the moon to travel around Earth. So that's the moon cycle right here. You can see the moon up right there. I just want you to watch it for me. So watch this part of the moon. You're going to see that go all around and come back up to the same spot. And this side is always going to be in the sunlight. So why do you need to put nuclear on the moon when you can put solar power? And it seems it's your first time back there. Why not go to the spot where you have the most heat? Because it's going to be freaking cold on the other side. So when that travels around Earth, if you look at the one up there instead of this one, because that's the one they want you to look at, the view from Earth. Forget the view from Earth. It's not going to hurt them to be up on the other side with the sun and they can have solar powered. So why aren't they sitting up there? Because they won't really be on the moon. Because they can go to that side, right? And they would have sun 24 hours a day. Do you get it? Do you get it? What they're doing? How come they haven't been back for 42 years? How come nobody went there for 42 years? And how come they don't go back to where they were before? Because that's what you would do, wouldn't you? That's what you do with Arctic expeditions, for instance. If there was a historical expedition, they'll go back and try to get souvenirs. Columbia, which is Sellafield, United Kingdom, got the nuclear constabulary congratulates the graduates. Nuclear constabulary. This is such a strange story. They're allowed to carry guns. They're high school with diplomas, and that's all they needed. Now they get a gun. And their job is to stop you from taking pictures of the decrepit old nuclear plant. And Ole Rollison, we covered him before. He's a disgusting, useful idiot for the nuclear industry in Sellafield. The Civil Nuclear Constabulary, which polices Sellafield. So they're going to be in a nuclear wasteland, surrounded by a nuclear wasteland they call farms. The amount of radiation in these farms every year that they're shipping to the market and poison the food is stunning. It's stunning how much radiation we're talking about. Sellafield, of course, got 1,000 buildings. They got places there nobody's been to for 50 years. They got fuel pools that are outdoors. Right? Like Arriva Bay up in the former SS, the Soviet Union. Which is the worst case scenario because you're hemorrhaging radiation into the environment. This is one big stupid nuclear wasteland. And they got police there with guns because they don't want people there with Geiger counters coming by. Their job is to go out and harass anybody that comes close to it. But all of these farms are producers, and that's why you're getting so many sick people worldwide. It's because they ship the food from the nuclear wasteland. But if you go look at the studies of the United Kingdom, variations in concentrations of plutonium, strontium-90 in human teeth collected within the British Isles. This 1995 study here, a laboratory study of 239, 240 plutonium, 241 americium, which decays to, plutonium, and the horrific 243, 244 curium by edible winkles, which is like a periwinkle, like a little snail, from the Colombian coastlines. And this is caused by Sellafield discharges. And curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker from plutonium. And because this is a weapons remanufacturing plutonium mixed oxide, they've got a nuclear meltdown still going on there from 1957. They're still hemorrhaging 8 million liters, 2 million gallons a day into the Atlantic Ocean from a mixed oxide fuel meltdown at Sellafield in 1957. Not only that, but they've been taking fuel from all around United Kingdom and storing it on the site, but also making mixed oxide fuel from it. It boggles the mind that this could happen, but it also shows you how much influence and power this industry is able to wield against the unsuspecting public. Variations in concentration of plutonium, strontium-90 in total alpha emitters in the human teeth collected within the British Isles. Oh, we already done that. 129 iodine and moss downwind from the Sellafield. Everything is, what do you mean downwind from the Sellafield? What the hell are you talking about? The wind only blows one way in the United Kingdom? Wow, that's crazy. I didn't know that. That's amazing. From the nuclear fuel reprocessing disease factory. So all of these people are going into a nuclear disease factory, and they're emboldened with the idea, the false fabled idea, that they have an important role. They're going to protect them from the terrorists who are going to come there and take the fuel out of the pool. But it doesn't. You can't do that. It doesn't work that way. You got to come there with a special machine, special trucks and cranes, all kinds of special. You need a big operation to go there and take something out there that's going to be able to be converted into a dirty bomb or something. These are ludicrous assertions. And they're going into a nuclear wasteland. And so when they go home, let me tell you that again. When they go home, right, and they wash their clothing, their children's clothing are going to be contaminated with all these elements too. And any money that they're making, they're going to have to eventually spend on health care for their loved ones and themselves and their spouses and anybody else that uses their washing machines or their soaps or their face cloths, because they're going to contaminate everything in the house eventually. And the reality of it is, the clothing they're going to be wearing, the industry is so sadistic, it's probably going to be specially made so it collects the most radiation, because a dead man tells no tales. The last thing they want them doing is when they're growing old and writing books. Factors affecting the uptake of radionuclides by the cattle grazing on the pastures reclaimed from the sea. Airborne radioactivity on the Scottish coast. Well, they have huge amounts in the community, the coastal communities of lung, liver, respiratory, pituitary, thyroid, cancers and everything else, because the ocean liberates the radiation, and there's a lot hemorrhaging just directly into the ocean, let alone the airborne, back into the communities through evaporation. Nuclear installations, childhood cancers in the United Kingdom, mortality and incidences for 0 to 9-year-old children. Systematic analysts have so far been limited to cancer mortality. Why would you limit it to cancer mortality, to actual deaths? Because if you look at the other statistics, everybody's going to run away screaming. It's a disgusting, despicable industry. And then they give these people guns and say, go out and stop anybody that looks suspicious. And so they're bored out of their trees. They see anybody besides the farmers, they're going to go out and harass them. A little power thrill, right? Absorption of radiocesium, which is the British terminology for covering up. Remember, they closed 9,400 farms after Chernobyl. 400 are still closed today. So you should have abandoned the United Kingdom, period. And still should. It's a nuclear wasteland. But what Sellafield, which used to be called Windscale, remember that, they had a nuclear meltdown. They changed the name to Sellafield to hide what they'd done when Windscale happened. They went into the theaters and collected people from the back rows of the theaters. Because back in those days, of course, 1957, the rich people sat up front, the poorer you were, the further back in the aisles you sat, right? So they went in and they took these people in buses, brought them into the nuclear meltdown, put them in overalls, sent them in to push the fuel rods out of the reactor cores. They didn't go to the universities to get the nuclear academics. They didn't go to nuclear corporations. They didn't go to the military, the police. No, they went and grabbed the most vulnerable of society. Again, whenever you see nuclear connected, you ended up with a worthless society. The people in charge are literally worthless people. And it goes right to their head. They're put on a pedestal. They're told they're special and they're important, that they're going to make a fucking difference. And they're like walking around. They're looking for anybody, and everybody's a fucking terrorist to these people. And they get this sheep mentality. Environmental pollution, health effects from plutonium, air, water contamination, bone tumors, lung tumors. It's not just bone tumor, there's liver tumors immediately within about 1.5 years of ingesting this. But you might not manifest until several more years before it's diagnosed. That's always too late. Evidence for an ineffective cause of childhood leukemias, which is because your body's producing so much white blood cells because you've got so much anthropogenic man-made radioactive in your diet, in your air, in your water. You're washing in it, showering in it, brushing your fucking teeth in it. The large influx of people in the 1950s to those areas might have been conducive to the epidemic of cancers. There was another study out of Columbia where you have all these children with leukemia, and they were saying it was caused by this is studies now because we've covered it many times. You'll find it in the anniversary shows of Sellafield and Windscale. But they claimed the cancer clusters in one of the studies was caused by the common flu. Not because they live right next door to a fucking disease factory known as Sellafield. No, because of a common flu. And people are literally fucking stupid. They can show them all this information right now, go down there and take the people living there and show them all of this, and they'll go right back to sleep fucking 30 seconds after you walk out the door. It's completely incapable of absorbing anything. The large influxes of people in the 50s of those areas might have been conducive to epidemics. So suggesting that bringing in the workers is what causes fucking cancer epidemics? Right? There's only one person on that study, got their name on that fucking study because it's not a study. But imagine what kind of despicable fucking monster you got to be to put your name on that study. Hey, that's the nuclear industry. There's no end to these people. The transfers of radionuclides from sea to land via the air is well established. In Colombia, where the effects have been mostly fully investigated, what do you mean most fully investigated? If it was fully investigated, Colombia wouldn't exist no more. You would move everybody out of there immediately. Plutonium, americium, radiocesium discharges. Well, the biggest byproduct of radiated fuel rods is the curium isotopes, not the plutonium, americium, radiocesium. And the curium isotopes need lead shielding 20 times thicker than you do for plutonium. Observed many kilometers inland. Does anybody really think it stops? Let me show you the fallout from Fukushima and tell me how many kilometers inland this model is showing you. That's a map of the entire planet based on 16 days after the tsunami when the model stops, which is 9 days after the last reactor blew up. Do you really think that the fucking radiation only goes a few kilometers inland? This is only 16 days, which is actually 9 days of radioactive fallout. This is the 26th of March, 2011. Just 16 days after the tsunami and 9 days after the last reactor blew up. In Colombia, where the effects have been most fully investigated, they're not fully investigated. And they don't understand. See, I got a uniform, I got a nice hat on, and I got a gun. Keep the terrorists out. I'm special. Yeah, they'll fucking dig your body up after you die. They'll ash that and sniff the ashes to see what radiation you had in you, and they'll put that in their little log book. And they'll get a pink little fucking star later on. Some kind of award. We are so proud of everything these exceptional officers have achieved to reach this milestone. The nuclear constabulary. Right here. Oh, you're nuclear. Oh, Jesus, you're at the nuclear constabulary. You're immune to the radiation like the fucking wolves in Chernobyl, right? We already denigrated down to that, have we, today? Not even fucking... It's 11 a.m. in the morning here, and I'm already into a tirade. Let's move on to another story, because I get pissy. So all of their health will be destroyed, and their children's and their loved ones and their families' health will be destroyed in increments over the next decade. Not 20 years, but the next decade. And they only need to go there and work for, you know, if you go to Hanford, you only work for 8 hours. Hanford's very similar to Sellafield for the emissions and contamination. So if you go, by the way, Sellafield's the biggest contamination in Europe site. But if you go to Hanford, which is similar to Sellafield, and you work for a lousy 8-hour shift once in the last 80 years, a single 8-hour shift, you're entitled to a fucking pension a day. You're entitled to health care, too. And you might be entitled to a $150,000 payout. If you work, and you don't have to prove you got sick there. You just got to say, proved you worked there anywhere in the last 80 years for an 8-hour day. You tell me that's not a fucked up industry. Private nuclear reactor to power more than 2 million homes in the United Kingdom's stupid land. Why do you show me these pictures? Oh, this is where they're going to put one of the repositories out under the freaking ocean. This is a place where they have massive floods all the time, right? Why are you going to, you got to stop this. You can't have this friggin' happening. Why would you put it out under the ocean? Because you know it's going to melt down at some point. And it's the best way to destroy the future of humanity is to put something like that out under the ocean. Like, it's unconscionable that the world is not capable of comprehending danger that we're in, and that they've been lulled into this complacency by your universities, your governments, and your despicable, disgusting, hateful fucking media. And look, you see that little dot right there, maybe? That's the machine that's coming down with a load of fuel and is driving way down. This is all cartoons, right? It's going to drive all the way down, and then it's going to get to this massive. Look how big this is out under the ocean. We're talking, right? And then you see these guys in behind the radiation shields. They're going to lower the canister down the hole, and then there's going to be that's going to go down the elevator, and he's just bring out the useful idiot to tell you a whole bunch of lies. This is an idiot, the guy you're looking at right there. And me too, I'm an idiot too, because I'm trying to do something about it. So then you have these auto trucks will come down and they'll poop out a fucking cylinder of fuel rods, and that'll be put there, and then it'll be blocked in behind a wall of special material to soak up any radiation that escapes. All of this is to convince you when they don't have any studies on this whatsoever. And anybody in the industry will tell you this is going to fucking melt down. It doesn't need oxygen when it melts down. It'll chew a hole eventually right up to the ocean. And when the water goes there, then that's it for everybody else on the planet. And so they say, oh, it's going to employ a whole bunch of people, and there are going to be some permanent jobs after, and therefore we should fucking do it. But thank goodness there's a lot of people waking up to this misery machine. And they got all this propaganda inside to make you feel better, and then they got little boards so you can get rid of your frustration. It's kind of a version of the Americans where they had these sites set up way back in the day, these fenced in high, like 12-foot high chain-linked fences. And they would set them up wherever there was a big convention. And if you were a protester, you can get inside this little fucking fence that was like 40 feet by 40 feet of chain link fence, and that's where you were allowed to protest inside the fenced-in fucking pen. And she's an anti-nuclear protest. She's like, well, why would you want to put anything under the ocean? Looks like I forgot to plug in my external computer. I'm going to have to jump up and do that in a second. This is Sellafield, I believe, or what you call it, the new place. I can't remember. Lord knows I covered it a lot. The first private nuclear station is set to be built with the aim of having them running by early 2030. In a scheme, these are schemes, scam is the right word, previously championed by Boris Johnson. And Boris Johnson, of course, before he got ousted, 2 years before that, he removed all the restrictions on Fukushima nuclear wasteland, baby food, and cereal. And who eats cereal? Oh, that's right, children. So 2 years later, just before he got ousted, he removed the restrictions on all the food for the adults in the rest of the United Kingdom. Literally, one of the most egregious crimes I've ever heard tell of in history. Like, Genghis Khan has no comparison to what Boris Johnson had done to the population. He poisoned all the supermarkets, corner stores, and he bragged about it, and we've covered it extensively. 4 small modular reactors will be installed on the north bank of the River Tess. Well, first off, you don't have the actual license application into the regulatory agency, which is 1 million pieces of paper. That's going to take 3 to 4 or 5 years of several hundred non-regulatory agency members. I call them non-regulatory. They're supposed to be nuclear regulatory, but they're non-regulatory, non-nuclear regulatory agencies. Even though they're supposed to be the nuclear regulatory agency, they're the industry itself. And so you're going to take 1 million pieces of paper. You're going to have several hundred people go through that for 4 or 5 years. They're going to say you got to change this, and that, and all of these, and them, and those, and that, blah, blah, blah. So then they'll submit it back to the company. The company has to now to re-engineer the whole fucking thing, reapply it back to the regulatory agency, and finally, eventually, 10, 12, 14 years down the road, they'll get a license. Now you got to get the land. You got to spend $500 million on the land just to make it safe for nuclear because of the criteria. And then you can raise the money to build it. They can't even build their own fucking reactors they got now. That is going to end up costing them how much? The original estimate was $7 billion US dollars. Now it's $59 billion US dollars. And no hope of ever getting it in the next 10, 12 years. Zero hope. And it's supposed to be up and running already. Literally the stupidest thing you can do is let nuclear in your country. The most dangerous thing you can do is let nuclear in your country, because once they get in there, they destroy all your freedom, liberties, and your communities and your hospitals and the most vulnerable of society. And then they're like parasites and a virus attacking everything for the rest of humanity. So they reached an agreement with the U.S. manufacturer Westinghouse to supply the reactors. Westinghouse is not going to be supplying any reactors. Like, what the frig are you talking about? They don't even have an application into the regulatory agency. If all goes as planned, yeah, well, Hinkley Point C and Sizewell, these are so far-fetched as they are even right now. Remember, there's over 100 of these large nuclear plants that have been abandoned over the years. The only thing you didn't abandon and you should have abandoned was this fucking monster right there. That's a monster. What he's done is all the attributes of a monster, period. Not maybe, not almost, not close to it, but these are unassailable attributes of a monster. Our nuclear revival will be help to deliver cheaper, cleaner, and more secure energy for families and businesses across the U.S., UK. But they could use geothermal and have it all up and running in about 2 years at half the cost. I got to get my external computer up and running. Let me play a little short video to keep you occupied. And let me play that. this is TEPCO. I'm going to show you what the video actually looks like. Well, I'm going to play that clip first. And so this is TEPCO. He's going to explain Reactor 4. Their TEPCO's version of Reactor 4 is beautiful, it's wonderful, everything is hunky-dory, it's nice. And I'll be right back. So, I'm sorry. So the building to your left is what it actually looks like, but listen to what TEPCO says it looks like. This was a couple of years ago at the Washington Press Club, and this was the same one where I showed you Kathleen Higley earlier.
And Fukushima Daiichi stage, right after the accident, it was of course the emergency condition. But right now, gradually became the decommissioning stage, or more stable decommissioning stage. And that's that, as I mentioned, the successful completion of the dismantle of the spent fuel from the Unit 4. It's about 1533 bundle from the Unit 4. And we carefully manipulate the machine and successfully removed those fuel to the ground located pool.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Right, so you got, let me go backwards for 1 second. So TEPCO is trying to convince you that the building looks like that, which the media done to you to the right, but it actually looks like the building to your left. And they're not doing that because they're fucking bored. They're doing that because you're in so much danger. Because you're in so much danger. So this story really upset me today, and so I'm just going to move on. But and I covered this earlier for anybody who might be joining us right now. But it's heartbreaking to see an industry that could be dealt with quite easily allowed to do the things it's doing. Without the Department of Energy cylinders to hold it, Citrus will not deliver required HALEU. They're talking about a mixed oxide weapons-grade fuel. Is what they're actually talking about. Excuse me. So they're talking about making their own fuel, which they're dependent upon Russia to make. And unless the American government gives them, and we hear this all the time, right? Like they're giving, the nuclear industry is given everything. They're giving all the money, they're giving just rubber stamps, everything. They give them everything they ever want. They still can't accomplish anything. It's always broken promises that costs the taxpayers their livelihoods, their future, their security. Experts say the risk of flooding puts Withersea area, which is the underwater, under the ocean nuclear waste storage facility we're talking about just now, out of bounds for the nuclear waste dump. So, like, again, right, you remember that just now. Why would you put all your nuclear waste under the ocean? It's so mind-boggling because you can't quantify any of the assertions that it's somehow going to be safe. You have a rapidly eroding coastline because of the supercell storms post-Fukushima. Why Withersea's nuclear waste dump proposals are causing concern. The list goes on and on. Red Rant, Labour by-elections candidate once called for a ban on nuclear weapons and called for open borders. And she's moving up into the parties because that's how it works in the... Anything that divides you, right, will get put on a pedestal. Anybody that's unbelievably complacent or evil will get put on a pedestal if it benefits the nuclear industry. Nuclear comes first. Everybody else can get sick and fucking die. Red Rant, Labour by-election candidate once called for a ban on nuclear weapons. Which is, right, so and then they put open borders too, right, just to make sure they can demonize her. But yeah, why, like, it's better to buy everybody in Britain an ostrich than it is to build nuclear weapons. A massive blast hits Russia nuclear ICBM weapons factory. So their nuclear weapons factory got hit by one of the weapons NATO provided Ukraine, and which is 28 militaries. And so now I'm worried about a nuclear fallout from a Russian nuclear missile facility, but I didn't find the footage I was looking for. I was looking for footage 100%, and this is what you're looking at. I'm assuming is the real footage, but look how grainy the fucking stuff is. And we don't know what the long distance is. We don't have, like, it's so grainy you can't even guesstimate on your own, right? Because a lot of times, which happen almost 800 miles away. So they're saying that explosion is 800 miles away. If that's the case, if that's from 800 miles away, then we got a radioactive plume on our way right now from several days ago that I still haven't flushed out. I will probably flush it out today, though, and cover it in tomorrow's night show. Public meeting gives the residents a chance to review safety process for new nuclear plant. The meeting is to discuss the safety environmental review process for the proposed X-Energy Z100 reactor design at the Dow Seadrift operation site. Like there's 70 nuclear small modular reactor designs out there. Only one had an application into the regulatory agencies. So that's the only one that matters. And that was NuScale. And that doesn't matter because they stole the money through a Ponzi scheme from the investors. And they should have never been on the stock exchange without a product. So they stole billions and billions from the investors that had no right to be investing in it. And the investors should sue the stock markets that targeted them because they were targeted. Right, to put your money into these small modular reactors when they friggin' knew bloody well they didn't exist. It was purely speculative to consider investing. They should never been on the stock exchange. Whoever let them on the stock exchange got a few $1 million in their pockets. Most likely 10 or 12. Like, it's the equivalent of me saying, you know, I'm going away for 6 weeks. I don't show back up for 6 weeks. So 6 weeks later, I come back and I do a video and say, hey, I actually got a new design for small modular reactors. I need to raise about $5.8 billion to build one. And so the government was like, oh, this is great. So they give me $5.8 billion. And I just keep the lie going. Now I jump on the stock exchange because I can pay off somebody. I end up on the stock exchange. And now I got a bunch of stocks that I'm going to sell cheap. So the stock market ends up scooping all that up and then resells it to unsuspecting investors who worked hard all their lives in factories. And they take that money, put it in their bank account. 3 weeks later, the bottom falls out and all the investors lose everything. The government, who's going to get kickbacks from the company anyway, or at least they had the... well, they don't really care, right? It's all about the ideology. It's not about producing an actual product. You don't have to produce a product when it comes to nuclear. India is now in the elite club of stupid with the first nuclear sub. India. Of all people, India. Yeah, you can't filter out radiation, folks. Yeah, and Sparticle 1954 is talking about in the comments section. And I apologize because I usually get the poll up, right? So I don't usually see any comments. So let's do the poll first. Our pro-nuclear mouthpiece is some of the most despicable, hateful, subhuman fucking scum imaginable. I put a little extra in there myself for entertainment. And so Sparticle, 1954, Sellafield is the home of the Cockcroft folly. He came out with the cover story. He was the guy, allegedly, that climbed up to the stack and looked down into the reactor and seen the fire and discovered that they had a fire at their graphite reactor, right? Which was Mox fuel inside of it. And they were using graphite as a moderator, right? So they said they can put filters on top of the stacks and that would filter out the radiation. But it doesn't work that way. And then they didn't even tell the population for, I don't know how long it was. It was quite a long time. They did tell farmers they had to dump the milk and stuff like this. They couldn't bring certain vegetables to the market. But I mean, my goodness, the radiation in that country was staggering. And which shortly after that, that's when you've seen the epidemic of cancers and diabetes and heart problems, liver problems, lung problems, and everything else. So thanks for Sparticle. Yeah, it was an incredible scam. I'm glad you pointed it out. So let's keep going here. India's gone stupid, gone rogue on us. Now they got a nuclear submarine. Like, first off, like, you got to appreciate India. In a place where not too many people got toilets, where most people excrete just randomly outdoors, and which is insane because you got children doing it. So you get the adults watching the children getting their jollies. And you're talking about there's 1 million children die every year of dysentery, diarrhea, and pneumonia, and when that can be cured for around 15 cents per child with simple salts. Right, because they lack they have scurvy, basically. And that can be fixed with typical minerals, and very cheaply done. And starvation. The INS... Chakra, another stupid one I got to keep fucking eyes on in the future. Gandhi said the particular attention was paid to the management of nuclear waste material. Wait, what? Are we talking about India? We're talking about India, like Pakistan. India is alongside of it. Like their legacy of management of nuclear waste is atrocious. They dumped it directly into the drinking water for decades. They got streets down there of children that are completely lopsided, deformed, disfigured, double heads, just all the trappings of the nuclear poisoning. It's stunning what they done in India, where there was 10,000, let me find the story real quick here. Yeah, like I can find anything quick. I'll find it, don't trust me. I think I know where this particular one is too. Yeah, there it is. Because every once in a while I like to tell the story. There we go. Probably one of the quickest stories I ever find is this particular story because it's freaky. So, after Fukushima, there was 10,000 people were protesting a new nuclear power plant India was going to build. And what India done was they arrested all of them, booked them, arrested them, beat them. And I mean, you know what the Indian police are like, right? They come in with sticks. And they don't give a shit. Everybody gets smashed. They're literally morons. So the police booked over 10,000 of these impoverished villagers and charged them with sedition. With sedition. Which is what the police had done to them. That was sedition, right? And then they take them to trial, they take them to court, they got to go back to court every 3 or 4 or 5 months. There's been still going on. And their crime was they protested peacefully establishing a nuclear power plant, and they only have a little bit of drinking water that they're all dependent on for many generations. They only have a little bit of land, and immediately everything got contaminated. Through the mining, through setting up the site, because they usually spend like $500 million on the site, and they just contaminated everything, trying to dry them out of there, right? But this was their homeland, and in India, you can imagine how important that is in a place with no land. And they beat the shit out of these people, and they ostracize them from society. They can't go to school till their court cases are seen through. They can't get a fucking job. They can't get a bank account. They can't leave the country. And these people are forced to go back and forth, and then they're segregated to their communities to be impoverished. So that nuclear can get their toehold in that area. They sacrificed over 10,000 people and brutalized them. That was brutalized. The women and children were driven out into the river. They were beaten savagely by the so-called police and authorities. Wherever nuclear shows up, misery is guaranteed to follow. And we are obligated, not just through the Bill of Rights or the Magna Cartas or constitutions, but as stewards of this planet. This is our obligation. This is our watch. We're responsible. You have. And I mean, what is going to be your legacy? Is your legacy going to be you watch fucking Family Guy or you watch fucking Jeopardy, all the episodes? Is that going to be your legacy you're going to look back on, your loved ones will look back on? Why not have a legacy where you made the world better than what it was? You left it, hopefully they're able to sustain life. Because right now, if you don't fucking fight with everything you got, the future you're leaving is not going to be able to sustain any life. And I don't know if we'll win that battle or not, but we better try it. We bloody well better try it. I don't give a fuck if I died. At least I died. At least my headstone is going to say, I tried. In the nuclear industry, for the next 1,000 years, anybody mentions Dana Durnford, they're going to go, that fucking piece of shit. They won't forget me, I can tell you that much. They won't forget you either, because you were here and you supported me. The power plant constructions, and that's, I mean, it might not seem like we're much. You know, I got 20 viewers on our live show. I'm not worried about you, Dana Durnford. He's nobody. Don't you believe that lie for 1 second. We have changed the industry. We have sabotaged this industry with facts, with documentation that is unassailable documentation. Let's keep rolling here. India to add muscle to its navy might. And Spain is eyeing a submarine deal with India now. Spain, oh, well, we want a nuclear submarine over here too. What the fuck are you going to do with a nuclear sub, you stupid? Like, you don't even have fresh water for your population. You can't fucking eat or drink nuclear weapons and nuclear submarines and nuclear fucking aircraft carriers, you morons. This is the military-industrial complex. It's destroying everything. And it's doing it in a way that most people can't recognize it, can't comprehend it. Vibrations in cooling systems means New Georgia nuclear reactor will again be delayed. Vibrations in the cooling system. Imagine if they didn't catch that. Because these are big reactors. The first reactors they built in decades and decades. That are how far behind schedule? 14 years or something? How many billions behind over budget? Is likely to lose 30 million in profit each month. There's going to be more than that. So it costs $35 billion. And that's adding into $3.7 billion that the original contractors paid Westinghouse, who's going to build small modular reactors in the United Kingdom. Westinghouse went bankrupt in the United States. The reactors were originally projected to cost $14 billion. Now they're at $35 billion. And they're nowhere near finished, and the price is still going up. Not only that, you could have doubled your geothermal of whatever that generator is going to put out. And you don't have to worry about breathing air or drinking your water or eating fucking food for 1,000 years after. February 27 drilled test plans for nuclear power station emergency. Nuclear power station emergency. These stories get fucking stupider every time. I might as well swear. I've been swearing the whole show. It ain't gonna friggin' make any difference if I don't stop swearing now. Might as well get it out of my system so tomorrow night it'll be back to normal. International Atomic Energy Agency donates science kits to African schools. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, which is just a corporation, it's like Walmart or McDonald's. They don't have any sovereignty over any country. They're not regulatory agencies. They can't fine. They can't impose any sanctions. They can't do anything against any country or any industry. And they're 195 militaries. And if you look at what their legacy is, which, like, for instance, what they done to South Korea or North Korea when they first arrived on the scene, because they were here a long time before that. They were known as the League of Nations. And they failed so miserably, like Windscale, they changed their name to hide their crimes from before, right? Because if you look up League of Nations, what you're going to see is this incredible legacy of just heartless misery that they left behind. And that didn't change. If anything, it got more prolific. And it's this society, humanity is in sleepwalking. I'm not. You're not. And I'm not going to fucking sit in silence and let these bunch of chicken cowards continue to fuck over our planet. So the despicable, disgusting military-industrial complex known as United Nations' little pet monster known as the International Atomic Energy Agency / IAEA is donating science kits called brainwashing, deadly brainwashing material, lethal brainwash material to 12 victim schools of victims in Africa, where the children have to walk for 2 hours to get to school. And when they get there, they get this massive fucking dose of propaganda from the International Atomic Energy Agency. And look at all the dipshits there. Oh my God, somebody gave us 100 science kits. We're so special. Can't wait to brainwash the little kiddies. Redefining costly, unproven new nuclear as clean as dishonest, disingenuous. Attempting to redefine the fission process as clean energy, which is not. Expensive, unproven distraction. I'm talking about small modular reactors now. Expensive, unproven distractions. That's the best way to look at it. New nuclear energy projects are slow, costly, and risky. And would divert resources from developing true clean energy technology. The best ones out there, by the way, are geothermal. Let's be clear, nuclear power has significant drawbacks, poses serious health and environmental risk, and new designs for nuclear power plants are decades away, at least from commercial viabilities. And recent NRDC analysts and small modular reactors find even the generous incentives this concept for new, smaller nuclear facilities cannot compete against cheaper, proven clean energy like wind, solar, and batteries. And U.S. hasn't built any nuclear modular reactors, period. So supporting them is speculative, even on a good day. And in fact, the decade-long plan to build the country's first commercially small modular reactors in Idaho, which is NuScale, we talked about earlier extensively, was canceled last year, 2023. And cost doubled to $9.3 billion. It was actually almost $20 billion if they had built it. Because you know that once they try to build it, then the expenses goes nuts, right? And then not only that, because it's the first of its kind, it was going to be out on the Los Alamos National Laboratories, I believe. So it wasn't even going to be plugged into the grid. It's literally the stupidest concept imaginable. And it was going to cost over $20 billion. But you're only going to produce around 460 megawatts, which is less than half a gigawatt, which is, so they could have built 3 times the power with large nuclear than they can with small modular reactors. In other words, they knew all this. This was 100 unequivocal a Ponzi scheme to bilk the investors and the taxpayers out of multi-billion dollars. And what did they get? They did steal around $6 billion. And so the communities that invested huge amounts of money for memorandums of understanding for a technology that does not even exist, is not even in its infancy. Against nuclear power. No public input whatsoever. So again, they want to build nuclear. They want to throw all kinds of money. Senator Travis Hackworth is on it too. Delegate Israeli O'Quinn has an egregious build-up on this. They're saying the folks back here are okay with all this and we have no public input. So the public is the public is excluded from how you're going to spend the public money. Which passed small modular reactor development costs to ratepayers. 21 organizations voted to oppose it. But we already have a 50% cancer rate over there. I thought it was West Virginia or something. Yeah, Virginia. 50% cancer rate in Virginia. We can make public comments after they get the bad bills into laws, basically. I have some background noise. Just hang on a second. I'm in a place where people use quads like other people use cars. And if you know anything about these quads, they're very obnoxiously loud. They drive them right down the main street here all the time, eh? You know, I can't say anything because I do it too. I don't use it all the time. I use it just for research expeditions. And I have a plow on it for plowing snow too. I'm supposed to have 2 snowstorms this week. Tuesday and Wednesday, I think. But we don't know. We got rained out on our last snowstorm, so we kind of got lucky. Design uses high-temperature superconductor magnets to collect positrons and focus them into a tight beam. Let me go back to that story for 1 second here. A new positron source could give the lepton colliders a boost. See, when you see these connotations, right? These are... You don't have any evidence that it's going to work. But they're going to spend they'll buy all the precious metals that you need for important stuff, and they'll use it on these disease factories, basically. France's EDF shut down 2 nuclear reactors after the fire at Chinon plant. The threatening case for nuclear. I'm going to play this little video for you.
Where I'm standing is on top of what used to be reactor building number 4. The whole of this building was blown apart by a huge explosion.
We are here inside Reactor 4 at the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant that was severely crippled during the earthquake and tsunami of 2011.
Of the decommissioning work taking place here in Reactor 4.
At the end of our tour, we were checked for radiation exposure. In 4 hours, I received the equivalent of less than a chest x-ray.
1,500 highly radioactive fuel rods inside this pool. They've got to move them outside of this reactor.
Okay. Yeah, so sometimes you get... their life is so fucking pointless. They get out on their quads and they just drive around on a Sunday morning because they don't have anything in their life worthy to do. And so this is why I usually do my shows at 10 p.m. at nighttime, because you don't have to deal with any background noise. And so I sacrifice every single night to doing these shows. And today I can't do it, so I'm doing the show early. So the Globe and Mail, which 4 times a week after Fukushima for at least a decade straight, promoted uranium stocks. Well, uranium stocks had dive bombed to the lowest number ever. They were out there manipulating people into buying uranium stocks. And that's what they're doing again, right? They're going to promote it. They're promoting the Darlington nuclear power plant in Ontario, Canada, because everything nuclear means they can justify now promoting their stocks to the staff, right? Oh yeah, no, nuclear is bouncing back, so don't feel any guilt getting out there convincing Mom and Pa Kettle to buy these useless, worthless fucking uranium stocks. Last week, the Ontario government announced plans to spend many years and billions of dollars refurbishing an old nuclear plant in Pickering. So think of that statement like an endless time. They don't know how long it's going to take, and they don't tell you how much money it's going to cost. But geothermal exists. Why would you build something like that? Why would you rebuild a disease factory with the legacy it has, which is on one of the biggest drinking aquifers in North America on top of that, right on the shoreline of it, which certainly supplies water to around 4 million people. And so they're promoting something like that. It's unconscionable. And this is what they call a job. This is what they call a career. This is their career. They write a little article and they take home $100,000 a year. And all they got to do is be a fucking monster. That's all they got to do is be a hateful monster, write an article and trick people into supporting something that'll poison their loved ones for the next 100 years. Winning the battle to control global warming. So global warming is 418 parts per million of carbon in the atmosphere. 418 parts per million. It's basically 0.04%. If you get below 0.02%, plants don't grow no more. In fact, when you get close to 0.2%, most of the plants will already be gone. So carbon capture and stop the production releases of carbon into the environment is actually the worst thing that could happen. Nuclear is global warming, though. It's like, so carbon, for instance, is really heavy. It doesn't travel very far. But I showed you the models earlier, the radioactive plumes from Fukushima. They cover the entire planet. And those plumes are invisible snowstorms that pulses energy almost at the speed of light every second for millions of years. And so every atom, you put 200 million atoms in the head of a needle and you can't see it. So think about that, pulse, each one of them pulsing energy at the speed of light. This is why you can boil water for 1 million people, because it has so much energy in such a tiny piece, right? And it's not like it pulses once and that's the end of it. It pulses once every second for millions of years. I actually had there was an Australian story that blew up. It was in Australian media. I went into the chat room comment section and started leaving comments. And I was providing evidence, and the opposition was saying it only pulses once and then it's gone, like it turns to fairy fucking dust or something. And I remember being so upset that somebody could actually be that evil, and that person knew the difference. It was very obvious that was part of the nuclear industry. And they were there with nothing but propaganda, and there's no way for me to win in the comment section. It's just me by myself. I gave them a good go, though, don't trust me. So, the plume covers the whole planet, and this model here is less than 25 days. The entire planet. But it's not cesium-130, which is 137 million to 10 million atoms per cubic meter of air. These are numbers we've never even heard tell of pre-Fukushima. And so it's not just going to be cesium-137. It's going to be all these. This is just a fraction of the isotopes that will be in that exact plume. And the biggest byproduct is the curium isotopes. You can't get plutonium off your roof. Yeah, you can't get rid of the radiation from your property. And a Geiger counter on a stick, you can't measure plutonium. Geiger counters don't measure plutonium, Richard. The second is nuclear power using Canadian CANDU technologies, the CANDU reactors. If you go in my videos and you put up CANDU reactor, Canadian CANDU reactors, stuff like that, you'll find a 3-hour presentation of studies on the CANDU reactors that I produced last year. And trust me, that'll change your life. And right, so they have hundreds of these useful, despicable, hateful scumbags. These are hateful scumbags. There's no other way to describe someone like that. Hi, Environmental Coffee House. How are you? I know you are. Thank you. Ain't that interesting? Oh yeah, I'll do an interview with you. You have to give me a call, or you can send me an email. 709-589-4406. 709-589-4406. But in all honesty, Obsolete Optics I borrowed him from here. He put out way too much wrong information. I couldn't have him here. Refurbishing Pickering nuclear plant is the right thing to do for the climate. In the middle of a climate emergency is not an option. Too long, too slow, too much work. And Pickering is a disease factory already. He's got a legacy. He's one of the oldest nuclear power plants on the entire planet, sure. English residents to attend nuclear conference. Ignis, which is Canadian, up in Ontario, where they're going to put a nuclear waste management organization, which is the industry. Now, they've had $28 billion for 19 years. $28 billion, which is located. So they're making around $1.7 billion a year interest. And they come into a community and they'll divide the community right down the middle for the first part. But then they'll start passing out millions of dollars here, millions of dollars to all the government schools and any little foundations, organizations, and hospitals and stuff like that. They'll buy them ambulances, buy the fire departments a bunch of new trucks. And no, there's no favors needed. We just want to be friends. And so eventually they're going to call for a referendum. Now they divided the community, and they know who's going to win is the non-nuclear, anti-nuclear crowd. But they need it to look good. So they need to be able to hang out there. They need to have some friends. And they need to come in and infest and be parasitic in the community. And then eventually they'll vote no, we don't want nuclear. And they'll move to another community. And it'll take another 5 years to put everything else. Well, we'll see, Coffee House. I'll definitely do an interview with you if you like. There's no problem there. It's just, you know how honest I am, right? I don't sugarcoat shit. I don't know how to do it. I don't apologize. I'm just honest. And when I say something, that's what I mean. There's no left or right to me. That's just the way it is, right? So I'll be happy to do an interview. We can do Skype, or we can do. There's a few other ways we can do it. Some residents in North, or we can do telephone, whatever works for you. Some residents in Northwest Township had a short list for a nuclear waste repository will be going places soon on the Nuclear Waste Management Organization's money. So what the Nuclear Waste Management Organization done was bought 150 acres of prime farmland. And they want to store all the nuclear waste, which is surrounded by prime farmland in Bruce County. And they want to dig their nuclear waste right in the middle of all the prime farmland. And everything is vented. And it's going to take them 100 years. So for 100 years, they're going to be driving trucks where all the trucks are vented. And they're going to be repackaging the waste right in that. But they want the farmlands working the whole time, because they only need a section. They're going to be underground, right? And they move all that radiation out to the supermarkets all day long. New glass ceramic composite shows promise for safe storage of nuclear waste. So, again, right, to get this university kids, students, not corporations, not academics, not scientists, not kids from the fucking school, not even graduated, and they got the solutions. They got the solution. Buy their stuff, right? So the problem with nuclear containment is it becomes brittle from the neutron bombardments, the beta rays, the gamma shines, the X-rays, the alpha shines, everything. This compromises, it doesn't matter, glass, steel, cement, titanium. It doesn't matter what you put it in. It's going to make it so-called brittle. And so if you have an earthquake, you have anything else in that area, that will shatter it. But it will shatter on its own eventually. There is no way to contain it. It shouldn't exist. And the stuff we're talking about is splitting atoms. So it's even more difficult because there's so much energy. Again, they don't even understand what the downside. They say production of nuclear waste, but that waste is splitting atoms into the environment. Rock says, but Dana, there's rainbows and unicorns emitting from the stacks. I don't know how to answer that one. Rock, sorry. I know you're just pulling on my leg here, so I'll just let it be. We're rocking on the pole. We got our pro-nuclear mouthpieces, academics, scientists, journalists, some of the most despicable, hateful, subhuman fucking scum imaginable. Well, I do believe they are, Dana. Hey, we're almost through. We only got a few minutes to go. We only got one story to go. So the problem with the University of Saskatchewan's assertions that using glass and other material to encompass nuclear waste as a solution is ridiculous. Because of the high energy every moment means you're going to compromise the integrity of whatever the material you're going to use. And the last story of the day, and then I got, we'll show you some pictures from the weekend. Linux goes nuclear, Fedora atomic desktop. So the new Linux systems where you're supposed to use to get away from Microsoft and Apple censorship is censored. And they're calling it the atomic desktop. So when I seen new Linux, right, I looked it up and then I seen this story and I was like, oh, for Christ's sakes, I can't use that. Like, it's absurd, isn't it? Fedora atomic desktop. So the nuclear industry now has infested the only alternative desktop operating system out there. Such is life. So this is a new winch I bought. And then I had to go out and buy this contraption here to mount the winch in, which is a 12,000 pound winch. And so this was Friday shopping. So I got a fuel pump over there, a battery powered fuel pump. My God, am I ever glad to have that. They were $60-something. Then up in the top corner, you can see I got a winch, a new winch for the boat. Because the one I got out there now is going to kill me. And so I'm thrilled I got my hands on that. You can see the latches over there are for the trailer, for the deck of the trailer, because I don't have enough tie downs. So I got 2 packs of them, and they're not cheap. And then the center one up there that looks like a flashlight is actually a lockable mechanism so that I can lock the winch. So that I can lock the winch's mechanism, which is this one here, right? To the truck or to the truck or to the bike, right? Because it works. Now I can take the winch, which is now mounted, right? Because I took this picture last night, just before the sun went down. So I got that mounted onto the winch, and that plugs, that piece that is mounted in is this piece here, and that mounts either into my truck or into my quad, to the back of my quad. And so that's why I needed a locking mechanism, which is that up there. And so this piece here, this trailer hitch here, I need another one of them. So I got to go in today and pick up another one of them because they're not going to be on sale after today. And they're $90, right? And I need that in order to make the winch, be able to hook up the trailer and the winch. Because what you see there is 2 receivers. I already got one, you're saying, Dana. I said, yeah, I know. But I got a spare tire in the back of the truck that's in the way. And so I got to buy another one to raise the winch up so I can get the winch, so I can hook the trailer up to the bottom one and then still have the winch mounted to the top one. And the idea of that is it works for both my flat deck 16-foot trailer and for my boat trailer. So I can winch my boat on a trailer, or I can winch my equipment up onto my 16 by 8-foot flat deck trailer. It's complicated, I know. So I had to buy that, and I had to buy that piece to make the winch work. But I also had to buy other equipment like the lock. And then I need, these lights were cheap, so I got them. I needed the winch for the boat. And that's cheap compared to what I was going to pay for it, so it was on sale, I grabbed it. And the fuel pump, because I got so much equipment, I'm always fucking wasting fuel with the jerry cans, and it's very difficult for me to hold them. As anybody who used jerry cans knows, I'm just sick of it. And turns out I used it yesterday to fill up the bike. It was the best thing I could have bought. Because I have to transfer fuels lots of times on the boat, right? Because tanks give me problems. And the tanks take 120 pounds of fuel. They take 12.5 gallons each. There's 3 of them. So I got to go back in here today. And I got to go pick up another one of them. Because that's all I can afford right now. But tomorrow, these are coming on sale. And I want to buy one of them. And they're normally $160, $170. And it's not the best one I can buy, but it's a great one. It's fine. I can do my work, because I have a lot of work, a lot of repairs to do, and I need one of these things desperately. And I can't do it no longer. I just can't fucking do it no longer. So I got to go pick up one of these today, and the sale stops today on them. So I think I got enough money to cover that today. But I liked enough, and so I got that ready, but I got to get one more of them to make that work. So I got no choice but to go get it. And unfortunately, it's in the city, which is about $40 worth of fuel away, basically, an hour and 20 minutes away from me. But then I got to travel in again. I got to raise enough money, hopefully today and tomorrow, to travel in and pick up one of them before they get sold out, because they're so cheap, they're going to be gone right away, and it's difficult for them to get them. So I'm hoping somebody out there will donate $100 today, so I can go back in tomorrow to pick up that. And I'm saying 100 because I have to spend fuel too, right? But I mean, like, it's hard to comprehend it. So I show you these pictures because a lot of times it's hard to appreciate where the money goes all the time that I'm raising, right? And you see pictures of the sheds sometimes. You see pictures of the sheds, you start to get glimpses of the background stuff. And I got a tendency not to show it because I know the industry is out there, but I decided I don't care anymore. And everything costs money, right? I live on a pension, and I can cover my bills, but that's all I can really cover, because I always got to take my pension and spend it on stuff like this if I don't raise the extra money. And so these big winches, these are not, I don't buy this kind of stuff that often. But if you understood the work I have to go through to make things work, you appreciate why I actually went and bought that for. But I had to buy all kinds of other shit to make it work. So I got that already, but I got one of them. I got to go buy another one. And there is other things I like to pick up in there today, like for the grinders and the sanders, why I'm there, because you get a deal on them, because you're in the city, right? I know that's probably boring for a lot of people. I apologize. But the links are in the bottom of my description, and if I don't ask, then it doesn't happen, right? Okay. We're going to come in and close the poll. I do believe that's the show for today. I know the nuclear industry loves to see this shit. Yeah, that's the end of the show. Okay, so our pro-nuclear mouthpieces, some of the most despicable, hateful, subhuman scumbags imaginable. Well, no, Dana, they are the most despicable, hateful, subhuman scumbags imaginable. Hey, you got me. Yeah, you got me. You're right, I'm wrong. Job well done. well, Gordon, start up a channel then and try to raise some money, I guess. Okay, well, we'll see everybody on the next show tomorrow night. I got to show it early for everybody today, so I got all day to percolate out there. Make sure to give it a thumbs up if you made it this far, because it looks like I got very low on the totem pole for thumbs up. But the truth has a way of finding its way out there. We'll see everybody tomorrow night. Have a great day. Oops. Have a great day and a great day tomorrow. We'll see everybody on the next show. Take care, folks.